Hello, and welcome to this week's Q&A session. This week, we introduce you to decision making. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them in to Christopher, and he will be more than happy to answer them for you. So if you're ready, Christopher, we'll get started.
Yes, Jacqueline, I'm ready when you are. Thank you.
Great. So Michael sent his first question. You said decision is not a choice, but isn't a choice the same as a decision?
No, absolutely not, Michael. Michael, the difference here is that the choices are a precursor to our decisions. And what we're looking to do is create a really good bunch of choices that you can have as a range and a selection and options to use against making a really good decision. So the decision is the outcome. That's what you'll end up with. The choice is the precursor or the preliminary considerations that lead you to your preferred decision. So when you think about a choice, then you think about having options. So it's not final, but when you make that decision, that is final. That's what you will stick to, and that's what you'll move forward with. So no, a choice is very different to a decision. And when you actually do something, ultimately, it becomes a decision. Whether you move something from one place to another or not is a decision. But whether you're thinking about whether you will do it or not, that's a choice. Hope that helps. Next.
Right. Leo asks, how does my history or experience affect my decision making?
Leo, history is a big part of who we are and what we are. It influences everything we do, everything we say, everything we are, our habits, and it will cause us to believe things in a particular way consistent with where we came from, how we grew up, the people we associated with. So history is a big part of what's going to make your decision making what it is. And it's your experience also in that wide world that's going to give you a better knowledge and better understanding of what's available to you. And it's going to allow you to become much better at what you do, because if you've had a lot of experience, then the chances are you're going to be able to have a lot more considerations and a lot more choices. In your history, depending on what it is, good, bad, or indifferent, is still going to have you with a set of references that cause you to believe things in a different way or a particular way compared to someone who had a very different history to you. So when you think about your history and experience, it has a massive influence on what you think and who you become. So sometimes that works for you and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you need to change it and re-engineer it to be able to get to where you want to go. So if you're getting the results you want, then that history and experience is working for you by allowing you to create good choices that facilitate a very good decision. But if it's not working for you, chances are you don't have a good system for thinking about creating good choices, and you might need to re-engineer some of your thinking, change some of your beliefs, habits and values. And if you do that, then you'll be in a much better position to create more beneficial and higher quality type decisions.
Great. So Riley's question is, how do my values affect my decision making?
Riley, your values deeply affect your decision making because your values are what you believe. Your values are the fabric of who you are. They underpin and they support everything that you are, everything you do, and everything you want to be, because your values will determine what you believe, what you think you can achieve, and what you actually do, because it will be governed not by just your values, but also your principles, your morals, and your ethics, all combined to influence you in a particular way, which is influencing your behavior more specifically. So if you have one particular set of values that supports success, then that's great. But some people don't have that. They have a mindset that is supported by values that are based around poverty and lack and limitation. So it's really important to make sure that the values you have are consistent with what you're trying to achieve, because if they're not, no matter how hard you try, you're never going to get there. You just need to consider what values are required or what beliefs are required to be able to get you to the goal that you want, to the level that you want, to the decision that you want. So it's really, really important. Next.
Gary wants to know, if I have a number of choices to make, how will circumstance affect that?
Wow. Circumstances really affects everything we do, Gary, because it will influence what we do, when we do it, how we do it, if we do it. Because no matter how much we want something, we might be limited by time, by money, by situation, or again by circumstance. But all these things will influence whether we do or don't do something. And there's a lot of situations, like you'll find marriages are a classic example, where there's a dysfunction in that marriage or that relationship, and they want to separate or split or part from each other for whatever reason, but they don't, because circumstances prove that it's not really practical to do that, it's not really congenial to do that, or that the cost is too high. So circumstances can have a very profound bearing on what we do, and if we do what we want to do. So no matter what you think, no matter how good your choices are, no matter how determined you are about your decision, it can actually be, circumstances can actually be something that runs interference on actually achieving it. So when you consider your circumstances, they have a massive effect on the decision you'll make and the person you will be as well. So your actions will be determined by what you really want, but will be also influenced by the circumstances you have or presented with. It doesn't matter whether it's work, home, social, whatever it is, those circumstances will absolutely influence you, and quite often will derail people and cause people not to go forward with their decisions, not to take opportunities and chances, and they choose to stay in a safe place and stay where it's more predictable. So even though the circumstances might not be congenial, they are something that most people are familiar with, and therefore they choose to adopt that or accept that as being the answer to their dilemma, their situation, whatever that is. So circumstances, whilst they have a massive effect, can really make or break us in a sense. Next.
Great. Fran's question is, should choices be made on intuition or instinct?
Well, Fran, choices should be made on intellect. Intuition will guide you, and so will instinct, but really choices should be made from sound reasoning, sound understanding, and the processing and evaluating of information. So when you're making a choice, or you actually don't make a choice, you have a choice, but you make a decision. That's the difference. So to have a range of choices means you have to be aware of what's available to you, and to do that, you need to have that information, those resources, that understanding, and that experience as well. And what that will do, it will raise one of your faculties, which in this case is your higher faculty, with being intuition. And intuition is what's going to give you a sign or a signal or a sense of knowing that what you're doing is the right thing. And as far as instinct goes, well, your instincts will guide you. There's no question about that. But the difference between that, instincts and intuition, is that instinct is more of an external thing. So you process that from an intellectual level, from a global level, whereas your intuition is something you have innately within you. It's something that's been developed over time, and it's something that you've adopted as part of your reasoning factor that allows you to interpret whether a situation's going to work, not work, is good, not good, whatever it is. So the difference is quite different. So if you're going to make a choice or have a choice about what you want to do, what you want to achieve, then intuition is going to be your favorite friend in this situation, and instinct will tell you if it's going to be the right way to go or not. But the reasoning process is done, as I say, at a very conscious level, a very intellectual level, and we do that, and then we decide through our intuition if we're willing to accept that, and if it feels right, if we think it's right for us. And if that's the case, then we move forward. That becomes our choice, and we make that our decision. Next.
Suzanne asks, I grew up in a very poor family. Will this affect the way I make decisions?
It shouldn't affect the way you make a decision, but it depends on what sort of family you were brought up in. I mean, some people, I know people that have been brought up in poverty and been extraordinarily successful and world-renowned people, and you don't have to worry about that, because I mean, you can have either of those opportunities. It depends what you were growing up in, what the environment was, what the situation was, because the values within a very poor family can more often than not, or quite often, be even higher than a family that is of a high economic value. So it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, or you've got opportunity or no opportunity. It's how your mindset works, because this is about getting the right references in your mind. This is about getting the right choices made available to you, so you can make a really well-informed decision about what you want. And then when you've done that, you can move forward with much more ease. So it's not a distinction you need to ever consider, Suzanne, because being raised in a poor family is not a bad thing. Quite often it's a good thing, and it doesn't define you. What defines you is your thinking, your intellect, your self-esteem, your self-worth, and what you truly believe you are within. So when you make your choices, it's not from where you came from, it's where you're going to go, because you're looking forward. You don't drive down the road looking in the rear vision mirror. You drive down the road looking out the front windscreen, because that's where you're going. And that's what this is about. This is about knowing what you want and going for it, in terms of making a decision to make that assessment, that evaluation, and that journey to complete the task that you set for yourself. Next.
Peter wants to know, what if I can't make a decision?
Peter, everyone makes a decision. So if you're not going to make a decision, you just made that decision. And that's the irony of all this, because no matter what, if we don't make a decision, the decision will be made for us by God in the universe, whatever that is. We won't have a choice, because that will happen regardless. So if we sit still, a decision will be made for us that will either starve, or we'll die, or we'll have to move, or we'll have to do something different. Because if you feel you can't make a decision, then fundamentally it's because you don't have a strong enough faculty there, enough consideration, enough choices to be able to say, this is what I want to do. This is what my options are, and I want to make a decision on that. So if you find that you can't make a decision, then you have to look to yourself and say, well, what's missing? And normally what's missing is the will and the determination to make that really effective choices, make those choices that are going to influence your situation or your circumstance. And if you're not making a decision, or if you don't think you can make that decision, then you've already made a decision for yourself. So it's about your mindset, your consideration, and the beliefs you have about yourself. So to basically articulate that is to say, well, I have a problem, and I have a problem with decision making. And nothing wrong with that, because that means you have a higher level of awareness. What your task now is to improve that and to make it much more effective, much more productive, much more beneficial to you and those that you share your time and space with. Because once you get your choices in line with your beliefs and your behavior, which is something we call praxis, which again is something we teach in Thinking into Results, then you'll find that your decision-making process becomes much more effective, much easier, and it will flow more freely and give you the opportunities and the benefits that you really want. Next.
Linda's question is, how do I know if I am making the right decision?
Linda, your intuition will tell you if you're making the right decision. I mean, it doesn't have to be a wrong decision, but it doesn't have to be a right one either. You just have to action it. If it's something you think you want but are not sure, then you're better off acting on it than doing nothing about it. Because once you start the process, you will realize instinctively or intuitively through your higher faculties that this is where you need to go, this is what you need to do, and this is what you want to create. So if you don't know if you're making the right decision or not, it's only because you have a weak faculty in terms of will and determination, in mindset and discipline. Because if you refine those elements, then making the decision will become much easier, and you'll find that everything you do that's associated with that will also become easier. So it's simply getting your mindset right, getting those values right, getting your beliefs in order, and understanding that you don't make a wrong decision, you just make a decision. And if you can accept that, then you'll work on improving them. Hope that helps.
Michelle has 2 questions for you today. The first question is, I'm always making the wrong decisions. Why is that?
That's interesting, Michelle, because if you think you're making the wrong decisions or always making the wrong decision, then you probably are. And that's because that's, again, the way you're communicating with yourself. It's your internal dialogue that's communicating with you to set you up for a situation that's something you think you want, but you're not really geared for it. So when you're in a situation where you're making wrong decisions, or think you're making wrong decisions rather, it's because you have a weak intellect, a weak internal dialogue, a weak will, and a weak discipline. All those things are contributing to not allowing you to be as effective as you want to be or as you could be. And there's no question that you can develop these skills. You can actually grow them, you can improve on them, and you can even create a situation where you're really benefiting from them in a very powerful and positive way. If you just get them all aligned, you've got to bring your thinking into harmony with your beliefs. And when you do that, then you'll find your thinking changes, your feelings about those thoughts will change, your actions will change, and your attitude will change, and also your results will change, which ultimately creates your behavior anyway. So if you can consider that it's a wrong decision, then why would it have to be any other way? I mean, you have the ability to pick, to choose, and to be anything you want. You just have to understand that you have the choice to be able to do and be anything you want. You just need to adopt the tools and the techniques and the strategies within your mind to be able to create it.
Her second question is, what if I feel powerless to make a decision because of my circumstances?
Okay, we did mention that previously about circumstance. I think it was Gary may have mentioned it, and what we determined was that circumstances will influence your situation. If you feel powerless in that situation, or because of those circumstances, and you feel like you can't make the decision because of those circumstances, then you need to go back to yourself and understand, what am I willing to accept? Because it becomes a point of tolerance at that point. If you've got a set of circumstances that are preventing you from changing something or creating something or deciding something, then it may be that you need to tolerate those circumstances for perhaps a little bit longer, as long as they're not damaging your health or your mental well-being or whatever that is. Then you can endure that a little bit longer, because I would understand whatever that is now, you're already tolerating it. So do it a bit longer, but create a plan to get out of it. If you feel powerless, then you need to understand that you're not. You're not powerless at all. You've got the understanding, the mindset, and the ability to be anything you want. What you need to do is just understand what it will take to get you from where you are now to where you really want to be. And again, this is where thinking into results really empowers people in a most profound way, because it takes your mind on a journey that it doesn't normally experience, because it taps into your inner potential and it creates possibility where there was none, and it creates understanding and awareness where there was very little. And when you start adding all these things up, then you start to realize that there's a very powerful influence there. And if through the process of education you can find a way out of your situation and your circumstances, then that has to be a really good thing. And that's kind of what we're offering, and that's what we're able to help you with. So if you feel that you're powerless, I assure you you're not. You just need to learn those skill sets and those techniques and those strategies that are going to help you think a little bit differently about who you are and what you are, alter your beliefs, alter your attitude, and create a situation that's going to be positively empowering for you and enable you to move forward, onwards and upwards, and make the decisions and adhere to those decisions and act on those decisions with power and influence.
Rod's question is, my wife tells me I have a poor attitude. Will this affect my decision-making ability?
What do I say without getting myself into trouble? If your wife's telling you you've got a poor attitude, Rod, then maybe you have. And even if you haven't, she believes you have. So you need to acknowledge that, because that's your partner. That's the person you're going to spend a lot of your time and a lot of your life with. So that's going to be a big influence on you. So will it affect your decision-making ability? Absolutely, because for starters, you don't have her support. If she thinks you've got a bad attitude or a poor attitude, then she's making it harder for you, because she's not supporting you in that sense. But you also have to realize that if you do have a not so good attitude or a poor attitude, then you need to look at yourself, because maybe you're missing out on a lot of opportunities. And the reason that would be is because your attitude influences your thinking, your behavior, your feelings, your habits, your beliefs. And all these things will contribute to influence your outcomes. So if you're having trouble, or if you're finding that your decisions are being affected by your attitude, then they most definitely are, because attitude is going to affect every decision. Even the most powerful and most successful people in the world have an attitude. They just learn to refine it and develop it so that it works for them instead of against them. And I guess that's really what you have to do as well.
Right. Shelley's question is, how do I stop myself from detouring from the decision I make?
Detouring from the decision you make. If that's about getting knocked off track, then that's quite common, because what happens is we start something, we have our choices available to us, we make the decision to move forward on it, we start the process, we start our decision-making process moving forward, but then before too long we get lost, we get bored, we get distracted, we get knocked off course, we stop doing it, we revert back to our situation where we started. And the reason that happens is because we run something we call paradigms, and paradigms are simply a collection of habits that we have which cause and influence our behaviour in a given particular way. It's a premeditated, pre-organised method of behaviour that's created by the thoughts that we have, and those thoughts are very, very subconscious. They're not something we're consciously doing, because they're so deeply programmed into us, and their deep-seated conditioning causes us to act and behave and believe in a particular way, which creates the results we get. So quite often we'll be wanting something, but getting a different result that we don't want at all. And the reason that is because we're controlled by these habits, or this collection of habits that we call paradigms, and those will continue to influence our behavior until we change them. So if you find that you're detouring, it's going to be partly because of that, but also because of your mental will, your discipline in thinking, because it's not allowing you to stay on track, to stay focused, and to stay in control of everything you want. And pardon me. And you'll find that the detouring will stop the minute you decide it will stop, because that's a conscious decision. What you'll do then is start to impress upon your subconscious mind that this behavior is no longer acceptable, that you want to stay focused on the task, you want to stay focused on the outcome, you want to manifest this particular behavior that supports the outcome of the decision that you want. So all you've got to do is keep working on yourself at a conscious level, and then impressing that upon the subconscious mind, which will then alter your behavior, alter your actions, and create a new set of behavioral traits that are going to complement and support everything you want to do. Next.
Gordon wants to know, I make plenty of decisions, but not all of them stick. How can I make them stick?
How can you make your decisions stick? By being committed to them. I mean, it's as simple as that, Gordon. I mean, if you want it, own it. And if you're going to own it, stick to it, because it's going to be something that you really have to be dedicated to. It requires a discipline, it requires willpower, it requires determination, it requires persistence to stay on track, because if it didn't, then everyone would be in utopia. We wouldn't have to worry about what we're doing or anything else, because everything would just be wonderful. Well, that's not the case, because situations, circumstances, events, social integration, all these things, work, money, all influence what we do, what we think, what we have, and how we feel about certain things. So if you're not sticking to something, it's a discipline that's lacking within you. You need to go to your conscious mind. You need to start installing very positive, empowering thoughts that are consistent with holding a thought until its outcome, until the desired outcome is reached. And if it's not happening, if that's a pattern you've been running for a long time, then it quite probably needs to be changed, because it's programmed into your subconscious mind, and that's the behavior you're running on. You don't even think about it, but when you get the result you don't want, then you become aware that, you know what, this is not working for me, I don't like this, but then you go and repeat it again. Why do you repeat it? Because you actually are running a program in your mind, in your subconscious mind, that causes you to consistently repeat that. And your task, your job would be to change it. So willpower, discipline, persistence are all required to be able to take you from this place where you feel like you can't stick to something to a place where you feel like you can enact, empower, and make a decision and have it hold true to you. Next.
Sandra's question is, what's the difference between decision making for a personal and a professional situation?
Sandra, there's very little, if any, difference. The only difference is the actual subject matter that you'll be focused on, because when you're making a decision professionally, it's done with the same faculties, the same processes, the same process that we use for a personal decision. Okay, it's possible a professional decision is going to have a higher risk associated to it, or perhaps more emphasis placed on it, or there might be a higher level of responsibility, depending what it is, because I think you can have that much responsibility and emphasis on a personal relationship too, especially if it's in a family. So when it comes to making a difference or understand the difference between personal and professional, then it's very little. If you get the system right for a personal situation, then you'll be able to carry that forward into your professional life and utilize it with great advantage, with great outcomes, with great results, because the whole process is very, very similar. And as I say, really the only thing that changes is the subject matter and the level of responsibility or your accountability in those situations. Next.
Great. So our last question for today, Christopher, is from Rachel. What can I do to improve my decision-making skills and become a better decision maker?
Rachel, you want to become a better decision maker? Then change your attitude. I know that sounds really hard, it's not meant to, but change your attitude, because when you change your attitude, your thinking changes, your behavior changes, and your results will change as well. So currently what you're looking at now is, if you've got a standard right now, it's consistent with the thinking you've got, with the beliefs you've got, with the values you've got, the principles you've got, the moral code that you work under. All these things are consistently going to monitor, manage and manipulate your current thinking to create the results you've always gotten. In order to become better at that, in order to become a better decision maker, you need to shift your attitude, change your thinking, realign your thoughts and your vibrations with the things you want, and develop a whole new way of thinking in terms of processing opportunity and creating choices. And when you do that at a conscious level, you'll start to impose those thoughts into the subconscious level, which then slowly over time begin to become part of your thought processes, your behaviors, and ultimately your outcomes and your decisions will be consistent with what you think and what you want to achieve. And ultimately that behavior and those decisions will result in getting you the outcomes that you most desire. So to improve it, you change your mindset, change your attitude, you consistently impose new and empowering thoughts into your subconscious mind that are going to be consistent with the new type of decision making you want to have, or the new type of attitude you want to develop. And when you do that, everything around you will change. The way you look at things will change, the way that people look at you will change, and ultimately your thought processes will becoming from a much higher level of vibration, and that's going to allow you to become much more effective, much more powerful, and much more influential in everything you do, think, say to people around you and anyone that you're involved with, or indeed anything that you want to accomplish personally. So simple as that. Change your attitude.
Great. So thank you, Christopher. So there you have it, guys. Thank you to all of those who sent in your questions. I hope you got the answers you were looking for. We look forward to seeing you at our next Q&A session. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact us via Messenger or our website, www.mindinterventions.com.au, or give us a call on 1300 822 090.